Political Roundtable anywhere and everywhere. Sam Riddle, Political Director, Michigan Chapter National Action Network. Community activist, advocate Regina Strong, and of course, Lavonia Perriman, former chair of Michigan Democratic Black Caucus. We're looking at Detroit Mayor Mike Duggan's presentation at Harvard University. We've been talking a lot about the Democratic ticket, and so we've not really had time to get deeper into that. But let's bring back the mayor here. Commenting. Let's bring back the mayor to kind of introduce you to what we're talking about. The mayor appeared at Harvard University Kennedy School Institute of Politics to talk about rebuilding the city. He was there he was there with Jamie Dimon, the chairman of Chase Bank and the bank's director of corporate social responsibility, talking about how to rebuild Detroit. And we're basically breaking it down, deconstructing the mayor's remarks. We made the observation at the start of our analysis that, in fact, the public lighting that the mayor, gave the story, that really in many ways, I'm using biblical inference here, made it look like he had this Damascus experience about the lighting and so forth, something hit him and then, of course, let there be light, there was light. That was not the story. That's not how the public lighting story of Detroit started. It was under the Dave Bing administration. It was Maureen Stapleton, former state rep, who doesn't really get credit for that public lighting. Maureen Stapleton, I remember having editorial board meetings with those individuals when they were pushing, honestly, and pushing strongly in Lansing for this public lighting authority. They were the ones, they're the originators, they were the ones that are responsible today for the public lighting that we see. But the presentation that the mayor gave at Harvard made it look as if this was, in fact, came out of his own, I guess, sense of desperation and sick and tired of being sick and tired, which was not the case. We also observed, the panel here observed, the mayor talked about people of color in this country, of course, inferencing or referencing the history of discrimination. But if you're the mayor of a majority black city like Detroit is, why don't you just use the word African American or use the word black? I've read the mayor's speeches. Hardly does he use the word African American or black, even instead of the city addresses. Butchered them out. So I don't know why. Maybe the mayor can begin to kind of, modify his lexicon for a little bit here. Use the word black. There's nothing wrong with that. We're going to go back to the speak, though. We're coming to Reggie, Adelia, Pam, and Juan shortly. But let's take a listen again. Here is Detroit Mayor Mike Duggan at Harvard University. Take a listen.
Your CFO, John Hill, was actually here at the Kennedy School teaching a class on Monday. And he said that he's brought in a lot of talent as well, and that you've brought in talent. There are a number of people in this room who might want to work for a mayor, be a mayor, make this kind of change. How did you bring in new people who could get things done?
Well, everybody in their life has a blend of how much you are financially driven and how much you are mission driven. And if you're really lucky, you make money at what is your mission in life. And so I've always been successful at recruiting mission driven people and creating an environment where they can learn to work quickly. But when I was 28 years old, I was given a chance by a county executive by the name of Ed McNamara to be the deputy county executive. I had 5,000 people reporting to me, I had a $2 billion budget, and he was willing to let me make some mistakes. And as a result, we built the airport terminal. If you fly into Detroit, it's named the McNamara Terminal. We built Comerica Park, we built Ford Field, we rebuilt things. And I've done the same thing, which is we've had a number of 20-somethings from Harvard in our administration.
We have more.
Brian Barnhill and the like. And so I would say this to you. We have more problems than we have the capacity to solve. And when you're in government, if you're going to get really good people, you tend to catch them at the early parts of their career or after they've retired. It's hard at government salary if your kids are in college and you're paying tuition.
All right, let's hold it right there. Detroit Mayor Mike Duggan giving a historical analysis, if you will, about his own involvement, of course, working for the Ed McNamara machine. Of course, if you're familiar with Wayne County regional politics, you know the McNamara machine. Certainly not a machine that has a good name, by the way, but a machine that has had many offsprings. Jennifer Granholm, Bernard Kilpatrick, Freeman Hendricks, we can go on and on. But a very interesting machine, political machine that will never be forgotten in the annals of history here. But Sam, the mayor mentioned Brian Barnhill, of course, rightfully so, was a graduate of Harvard. In fact, I remember when Barnhill was running Duggan's campaign, I wrote a big profile of Brian Barnhill and so forth. But what we are told from City Hall is that Barnhill actually has been sidelined by the administration. He plays no real prominent role. He was a chairman. He basically was a campaign manager for Mike Duggan, and he doesn't play a significant role per se today in the administration. But Brian Barnhill is a young African American graduate from Harvard who came back to Detroit to give back to the city, worked for Charles Pugh, then council president, and of course then metamorphosed into the Duggan campaign and ran that campaign. But today, if you talk to people at City Hall, they can't say this openly, but they'll tell you privately, people like Brian Barnhill are not happy.
Well, and the reason is because they've been benched. They've been benched by the manager, Mike Duggan, and others who are close to him, maybe even Tom LaWan. I mean, I'm not sure who the central players are with Mike Duggan. You know, we know some of the names, but make no mistake about it. I used the term Machiavelli earlier, and this is one of the most Machiavellian-oriented administrations to ever occupy the seat of mayor, this Duggan administration. And what they mastered the art of doing is a political sleight of hand. What they were doing at Harvard was sleight of hand. They were claiming to be one place when they're in Massachusetts, and then when they're speaking in Detroit, they claim to be in another place. Well, reality is reality, and you can shape Harvard's reality when you make a presentation. You can attempt to shape Detroit's reality when you're giving a state of the city. But again, when people who are hungry look around, and after your state of the city, they're still hungry, and you refuse to acknowledge their existence, when people who are out of work and would like to work can't find a job, no matter how you present it, they're still out of work. I mean, there is good news in Detroit on one hand. I mean, we see the shiny, glittery thing. We see Dan Gilbert breaking ground, building the tallest building in Detroit. But the reality of the other Detroit, as long as this mayor refuses to acknowledge it, especially at an academic institution like Harvard, it's an insult to academia, and it's certainly an insult to the people of Detroit.
Reggie, I want to come to you quickly, but let me just stay on the Brian Barnhill issue for a second. This is what people will tell you around City Hall, Sam, that Tom LaWan is the point man for jobs in the county.
Right.
Tom LaWan only came to City Hall because he's the mayor's personal lawyer. So they did go way back, okay? But one would expect, now I'm not trying to, make decisions for the mayor whether he should have his personal lawyer involved, with this administration and so forth. But for, let's say, a Brian Barnhill, a young African American who had a very promising future, I've always been impressed by Brian and what he represents, and because they are part of the city's future, and I know people that have approached me downtown, African Americans who are in this administration, who complained about the place for young African Americans. I had someone told me, my child wants to come back to the city, but we don't feel like there's a place for young African Americans.
You have to stay in your place.
Yeah, but that's a conversation we need to have, the place for young African Americans. Brian Barnhill represents that crop of young black Detroiters who went to Harvard, went to all the schools around the nation, and came back to give back to their city. Now, Brian Barnhill, I don't know what role he plays right now in the administration, but obviously it's a very invisible role. You want to build a city, right? Why don't you empower the Brian Barnhills of the world? How comes Brian Barnhill could not be a deputy mayor? How comes Brian Barnhill could not be the point man on jobs in the economy? How comes, you know what I mean? He has a Harvard degree. How comes he could not?
He's not white.
But those are uncomfortable questions we need to ask. And I'm using Brian Barnhill as an analogy. It could be any other folks in that administration. And that is what you hear at City Hall. So if we're bringing the city back, yes, we want to bring the city back, but what is the place for young African Americans, like the Brian Barnhills of the world, who today is invisible in city government?
Remember, welcome to America.
Can we have Lavonia's mic on, please? Go ahead.
Right.
Sorry.
Welcome to America.
Welcome to America.
Right. That we all have been living in, and we're struggling. We sit at home as African Americans, and our parents tell us we have to do double duty. We have to go out into the community and be one way, and we have to go out. Then they tell us, the people tell us, go get the education, do the right things, speak the right language, wear the right clothes. And you do all of that, and the Bryans of the world are dismissed because the system is set up not to include. Not to include them. We feel it. That's painful, but that's the reality that we live. That's the reality.
You know,
the mayor has. Let me add this quickly.
Okay.
You can have all the minute you want. But let me, the mayor has. We're told right now that one of the most powerful people in the mayor's administration is this guy called Dave Massaran.
Right.
He's the chief operating officer. They say he has more influence than anybody else in that administration. Now, the young white boy, accomplished, good for him. Doesn't take away from him. But if you're saying you're trying to help young African Americans, what's wrong with Brian Barnhill being the chief operating officer of the Duggan administration?
He's not white.
Well,
I just keep saying that because it's a factor. And then what happens is you get young black professionals and they burn out, they stress out. They are literally crippled by the dual standard of management that is biased against them.
Regina.
Yay. Okay.
Go ahead. You can have all.
No, I just wanted to make the point. I want to link this conversation and just what's going on overall to the mayor's point about mission-driven people. Because, I consider myself a mission-driven person. I think most of us on this panel are. And what I find interesting is what is the mission that we're focused on? Because if the city is coming back and it's going to be an inclusive comeback and it's going to be all of us together, it should be all of us together. I don't know much about what's going on in City Hall. I don't know much about Brian Barnhill's position. What I do know is if you're not at the table, and I think Lavonia made this, you're on the menu, which means if you want a more inclusive presentation about the city, if you want to talk about the good, the bad, but what can improve, and so people don't just get the shiny picture, but the real deal of what they're investing in, then you've got to have a lot of different people at the table, not just, black people and white people, but you need young and you need old, because you mentioned that, Brian is a young man.
Yeah. There has to be a deliberate effort to empower young African Americans.
It has to be deliberate. It won't happen just by accident.
Look,
right. But you need that voice at the table, because what happens when you don't have a voice at the table that can give a perspective beyond the three men you saw sitting up there on that stage at Harvard, then you get a choir with no harmony, right? So if all you have is the bass line, you won't have treble, you won't have soprano, and you won't have alto, and that's what's missing.
Yeah, but this ubiquitous table, you must understand something. This ubiquitous table is a very small table. When you're running things, and you're running things from a Machiavellian framework, your table is going to be extremely small. And if you have any doubt, and it could be the way a guy looks, it could be his race, it could be their sexuality, it could be their sexual orientation that could disqualify them from sitting at this very small table. Because when everyone talks about the table, it's not King Arthur's round table that you're talking about.
Not 50 guys.
It's a very small table.
Yeah, that was all men too. But
just about the right size table for the revolutionary Jesus to walk in and turn over. That's all I'm saying.
Right. And one of the other things is that if you're speaking about the mission for whom? Who is involved in that mission? Who are we talking to? Once again, who are we saying? Are we going to really move this forward for all people? Because it's almost like there's no justice for anybody. There's poverty. Poverty impacts everybody, but there's a few.
And why did the mayor talk about poverty at Harvard? You go to Harvard University, and you know what? And look, I don't want to take it away from the moderator, but I guess we all have our styles of moderating events. Yeah, we all have our style of moderating. But if I were the moderator at Harvard, I will start by quoting the 2016 census report for the mayor.
Yeah, that is you're an independent moderator. I can guarantee you this moderator was programmed by the Duggan administration. That's how it happens. Mayor, is there anything you'd like us to focus on? Anything you want to? You shape the moderator's agenda. They tried to do that with you, Bankerley, before. It doesn't work.
Right.
Not with the real intelligentsia, it doesn't.
Right. He went there with a mission in mind, talking points in hand, and presented his objective his golden
Yeah.
objective, and walked and came back and says, now I got to deal with the problems. Remember, he said
Yeah,
there are more
I-
problems than people that can solve.
Look,
Yeah.
Harvard University is the behemoth